Diddy's goose is cooked. I mean, the evidence is so overwhelming against him as it concerns the three things he's charged with: RICO, sex trafficking, and prostitution. And they all come with massive, massive consequences. For him not to take a plea, to me, is insane. I mean, RICO comes with the potential for a life sentence. So does sex trafficking. And he wants to take his chances with the jury? I think he's got to be nuts. When you consider the evidence against him concerning the freak offs and beating Cassie Ventura and all the other ugly, ugly allegations for which there seems to be pretty good proof. I mean, the federal government doesn't indict you if they intend to lose. They do it because they intend to win. And that's kind of how it's looking. So for him to really hang in there, just to my mind, defies common sense. Now, he's pitched trying to get out of that notorious Brooklyn jail where, for instance, Louise Mangione being held. And the judge has said no 4 times. How come? Well, because Diddy has been engaging in really, really awful sorts of things that the judge doesn't want to allow to persist, such as witness tampering, such as tainting the jury pool. Even while in jail, he's been borrowing other inmates' cell phones and trying to make calls to folks to influence them and trying to cover his tracks. Well, you know what? That never works. Criminals never get away with it. I mean, they always think they're one step ahead until they wind up in court. Well, that's what's happening here as it concerns his trying to get out on bail. And the judge said, no way, not happening. Now, Diddy's counsel says, oh, you know what? It's just his, his First Amendment protection. He can talk to whomever he'd like. You know what? Not so fast. Not exactly. Being at home detention, 24/7 detention, that's not going to cure these ills. He'll just be making calls from whatever phones he can in his mansion. The court 4 times after 4 pitches by defense counsel said, you know what? Not happening. No way. So he's stuck in that awful, awful jail. The one thing the court did allow was for him to show up in trial not wearing the orange jumpsuit, but wearing, regular clothes. That's important because you know what? If you want to create the impression a felon, a convict, a guilty party, you have him show up in the orange jumper. So that's kind of a victory that has meaning. Now, these little nuances, these little kind of tricks and twists, these strategical sorts of things, sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. For instance, Diddy had some family members in court the other day. Is that going to help? Is that going to appeal to the sympathies of the jury? Or is it going to look like gamesmanship and too cute by half? You know who else did that recently? Hunter Biden. He had his family in court when he was on trial. That didn't work for him. Will it work for Diddy? Who the heck knows? But he's trying, he's pulling out all the stops because you know what? When your life is on the line, that's what you do. Now, Diddy has not yet taken a plea. That doesn't mean he won't. As the news tightens, the deal gets worse for him, just as it does for the co-conspirators. You see, RICO is a conspiracy statute. It involves lots of folks contributing to a criminal enterprise where Diddy's considered the kingpin. It's a law that derives from organized crime way back in the day. It's been used more recently civilly and criminally where you got lots of folks involved and you want to put together a conspiracy. Here where Diddy's involved. Now, does Diddy think he's not going to be subject to a life sentence if convicted? If the jury finds him guilty? I'm not sure what he's thinking. Does he think his celebrity is going to immunize him from that possibility? I don't think the judge much cares about his celebrity. If the law and the facts allow for a lifetime sentence, he could under both counts, right? RICO and sex trafficking. He could easily get it. So he's playing very, very, very high stakes poker. He's making as if he's innocent, and he may well be, because obviously everyone in this country is presumed innocent until proven guilty. But boy, the evidence doesn't look good. And if I had to guess, I'd say before the gavel falls, he's going to take a plea to some lesser sentence. Maybe it won't be RICO. Maybe it'll just be prostitution for 15 years. I don't know, but I think it's going to happen. As it concerns the non-disclosure agreements that his handlers and other folks in his influence had to sign to participate in all the alleged wrongdoing, if these folks are subpoenaed, they have to testify. Maybe they offer to testify despite the NDA because you know what, consequentially, what's going to happen to them? If the person enforcing the NDA is in jail for life, is there really much downside in coming clean to avoid, for instance, being wrapped into this criminal enterprise if the judge wants to widen its net? So it's some pretty scary stuff if you're one of the people in his influence or who were involved in or participated in his parties. Because I'm telling you, NDA or not, I'll bet you lots, if not all of these people are going to wind up testifying against him. Now, to the extent folks were paid hush money took money from Diddy to keep quiet if things got bad, which now they have? Do they have to testify? Might they want to testify? Well, if they do testify, the worst thing that I understand would happen is they're in breach of contract. They have a contract that says you can't do this. What are the consequences of that? Give the money back? As compared to staying out of jail, I'd probably give the money back. Maybe there are some other remedies baked into these and hush money agreements. But if the main enforcer is in jail, who's going to enforce those consequences? So I think not much different than folks who signed NDAs. People who were paid hush money, if they're subpoenaed to testify, they have to. Might they offer to testify voluntarily to avoid getting roped into this criminal enterprise? They might. And the documents might not be worth much more than the paper they're written on. If you have the Uber app on your phone, you're going to want to listen to this. The FTC is alleging two things against Uber related to Uber's Uber One service. The first is that Uber automatically signed people up for Uber One, which is a service that allows you discount off of rides and food delivery services. And two, it's making it impossible for people who did sign up to get out of it, called a negative option. You know, you've seen it before, like with magazine subscriptions, where you can't get out of this thing before navigating or without navigating, like 32 screens and 14 different whatevers, and you don't even know where to start to begin with. And that basically derives right from the FTC's complaint. That's how complicated Uber made it for people to unsubscribe. Well, that's not okay. So the FTC is suing them for it. And I'm going to look at my Uber bill to see whether I was charged for these Uber One charges, because you know what? I'm not an Uber One customer. And if I was automatically signed up, that's a problem. And I'm going to have to go about fixing it. It's something you ought to check too. So take a look at your Visa bill to see what Uber's charging you, because if you paid too much because, for instance, you didn't join Uber One and you're getting Uber One charges, or you tried to get out of it and you thought you did and you're really not, the FTC's case will get you your money back. So hang in there, sit tight, but in the meantime, do what you can to get out of it. It's going to take a lot of work and a lot of navigation of a lot of screens, which is precisely the problem the FTC has with Uber. But you know what? I'm going to do it, and you might want to do it too. In December of 2024, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, the CFPB, finalized a rule that would come down on banks for overdraft fees to people who overdraw their checking accounts. Well, you know what? The sad thing is that Congress just undid that through the Congressional Review Act. And now that law is basically off the books. So consumers like us are totally vulnerable. The law is not the law anymore, and that's in keeping with what this administration is doing as it concerns protecting consumers. In fact, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, it's basically shut down anyway. That's something that President Trump did through executive order. And it's really sad because that means we're largely unprotected as it concerns improprieties by financial institutions like banks. I mean, that's why the CFPB was created, to keep banks honest. And it raked in tens of millions of dollars to help people, help victims who are subject to abuse by lenders. Well, the CFPB is off the block, and that's sad. And this rule is off the books, and that's sad too. So what's the lesson to take away from this? Don't overdraw your checking account because you're not going to be protected by the CFPB rules anymore.